welcome in to the NBA front office show. New intro, the debut of the new intro. Trevor Lane, you can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, I feel all official now that we can kick off the show with an actual intro.
Yeah, me too, man. I think it's great. I think, we had one way back in the day and then stopped kind of using it. And then went right into us. And we've got on our live shows, we've got our Mega Man theme music, which don't worry, folks, that'll still be there. We will never get rid of the Mega Man music. And then, we're just having some fun, man. It's time to introduce some new things ahead of the new season. So I'm all on board. I love it. Well done.
Well, and the old one was done by me. This one was done by an editor who's much more talented than I am, and was made some smarter choices in terms of how concise it is and all of that. So let us know what you think about the new intro. Keith, here we are, August 21st. We got some things going on around the NBA to dive into. We've got, obviously California has been dealing with the hurricane situation and all of that. In the meantime, though, we've been dealing with, a very different kind of hurricane.
By this evening, it is in southwestern Georgia.
Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of again. Thank you, man.
That's right. It's Hurricane Harden, and we're starting to find out a little bit more information behind the drama, which is important because the NBA has reportedly initiated another investigation of the situation. Kind of wanted to find out, what do you mean, James Harden, when you're calling Daryl Morey a liar? Are you lying in the sense that he promised to pay you more money on the next contract, which is illegal under the CBA, or was it more of a trade thing? Well, latest says that Harden was told that he would be traded quickly, and that's what he's upset about. That's why he is calling Daryl Morey a liar. And according to Ramona Shelburne, there may be more coming here. This was just the initial pain that James Harden was inflicting upon the 76ers, but it's not going to be the end of it.
No, it doesn't sound like it is. And there's been subsequent reporting, and we try our best to credit folks for the various things they report, but this is coming from all over the place with this stuff. So if we miss some, we apologize. It's the nature of how much is out there on this situation. So, like you said, NBA investigating. So we'll see. Harden now apparently is told through some sources it was about the traded quickly part. Like you said, that's why he is saying it's lying. It's funny. I see the little cryon at the bottom. I'm so used to a manual quickly that it looks wrong to me. It looks like it's spelled wrong because he's EY with that.
That's right.
So that's just an aside. But anyway, then we've got I forget who had this report, but Harden basically said, I'm not going to training camp. So that's where it gets really messy because, as we talked about, if he doesn't show up, that can cause problems from getting out of his contract at the end of the year and being able to sign with another team and all that stuff. So we'll see, where that goes. There was also some reporting. I know this one was from Brian Windhorst on his podcast, the Hoop Collective, or I think they changed it. I think it's not like Brian Windhorst and the Hoop Collective. But anyway, he reported it was the Clippers who basically cut off the trade talks with the 76ers. And I'm guessing that was maybe the Clippers saying hey, it's not happening. Like we just can't get there with that. And that's kind of see where it is. So I think the Clippers are, according to him, were the ones that were we're out on this. We're moving on and let's go a different direction. So where does that leave Philly and Harden, and what other teams are trade suitors? I spent a lot of time this morning just kind of running through the teams, and we're not going to do it today. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow or down the line this week if it gets really slow. But what is the most any of the other 28 teams that aren't the Clippers would offer for James Harden in a trade? And I'll be completely honest, it's not a lot. Either some teams have no ability to offer very much, or their priorities are elsewhere, or they just don't really need a guy like him at his age, at his salary on their roster. So I'm not sure where this one is going to ultimately land and go to, because I just don't know if they're going to be able to find a real trade partner that satisfies everything they want.
Well, and we have to remember too, at this point, there's a lot of players that are not trade eligible. Even if a team said, hey, we would like to trade this guy, but he just signed a contract this past summer, those guys aren't trade eligible until December 15th in most cases. So there's a number of guys that aren't even available under the CBA to be traded. And it's going to be a tough situation here. It's going to be tough to see ultimately where he lands if it's not the Clippers. And we've heard, some rumblings that maybe he'd be open to another destination if he could go somewhere else. But I think you're right. It's hard to imagine exactly where he goes. I mean, I guess maybe could Miami, if the Damian Lillard situation, and we'll talk about that more in a minute, if that just, keeps going and going and going, does Miami at one point just pivot and call up the 76ers? Maybe, but I don't even know that they're great trade partners here, nor do I think that Miami would give up quite as much for Harden as they would for Lillard at this point. So I don't know.
I don't hate that idea for Miami. Like, I think that's not a terrible idea for getting
for leverage sake, even
another guy. Yeah, just if for nothing else, like, okay, he's productive and he'd be still a very productive player for them. And if it doesn't work, you're out of the contract at the end of the year and you move on because presumably you're not giving up a lot. I don't know that Philly, given their assumed and reported on desires to, well, I guess it's not even assumed. Daryl Morey said it openly to have cap space next summer. They're not going to want Tyler Hero back in that trade. So you're probably talking a trade that's centered around Kyle Lowry, unless you're really talking a third team where Hero goes off to a third team or something like that. And Philly gets back expiring salaries or something. But like, I don't know, like, if I was Philly, I wouldn't necessarily hate the idea of bringing in Tyler Hero. I think Tyler Hero, throughout the whole Lillard stuff, I think it's like he's almost getting like talked down as a player. And I think Tyler Hero is a pretty good player. So I think that's, I think we've gone a little too far with like, he's not good because the Blazers don't want him for Damian Lillard. Well, the Blazers don't want him because they already have other guards. Like it's not really a thing about Tyler Hero. He's under contract and at a position where they already have a surplus. So yeah, I don't know, man. I'm very confused where this one's going to go with James Harden, just because nothing jumps out at me as there it is. There's the move. And when that doesn't happen, that's when you start to think, is there like a obvious move? Like, is there something I'm really missing if it's not the Clippers? And I, after spending a lot of time on it today, I just don't see it.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? Especially if the 76ers are trying to have their cake and eat it too. We want to win right now. We want to be the best team we possibly can be, but we also don't want any long-term salary. Tyler Hero would help them, but there goes your money for free agency. They seem to be hell-bent on having cap space next summer, which they're right in the sense that it's rare for a team that has the reigning MVP, that has a team where you could sell as a win now destination and cap space. Usually teams that have cap space aren't in a position to win right now. So Daryl Morey's right in the sense that it's somewhat unique. They would be positioned, I think, ahead of other teams that have cap space in terms of being a landing spot for free agent targets. But you're trying to thread the needle here, and it's just going to be an extremely difficult thing. And it doesn't sound like James Harden is going to back off of his stance anytime soon, because if there was any way to do that, I would probably say that's your best chance. That's your best path here. Just commit to one more year together and then go your separate ways next summer. That's probably your best option right now if you're hell-bent on having that cap space for next summer. But it doesn't feel like that's something that's interesting to James Harden. At least, when he's calling the GM a liar that he'll never work for again, it's probably not going to happen. So I don't know what the 76ers do here. I don't know what James Harden does here. This is a mess, and training camp is getting closer every single day, Keith.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple things on the point you just brought up with the Harden part of all. Yeah, it seems like he's like out. I don't know that he has any interest in repairing that relationship, even in the slightest bit there. From the Philly side, here's the issue with the whole, like, I want to have cap space and I want to be really good right now. To your point, those just, they don't work hand in hand. You're bringing in guys that can help you win right now. They're probably not guys on expiring contracts. So I think the issue for Philly too with the cap space is, let's say they completely clear the decks of everything. Let's say they can find a trade for PJ Tucker. They say, we're going to waive Paul Reed. We're going to renounce all of our free agents, including DeAnthony Melton. Then let's just say they're going to clear away their draft pick as well. That would leave them with Joel Embiid at $51.4 million on the books and Tyrese Maxey with a cap hold of about $13 million. What would happen in that case is under the current salary cap projection of $142 million, and that's the official projection from the league, they'd be at about $65 million in cap space. So that is the absolute max cap space they can get to. Now, if it goes up $8 million more, which would be if the cap jumped by 10%, which is the max it can jump, they'd be at about $73 million. Here's the problem, though, with that. $73 million next year, or $65 million, pick whichever one you want. Max salaries on the low end are going to be $49.7 million. On the high end, it's going to be like $52 million. So what happens in that situation is that's not double max space no matter what. Right. For guys, especially 10 plus year guys. Even if you drop down to the next one, it's still not double max space because that's 42.6 million, or on the high end, right around 45 million. So that's the issue is just when you're carrying anytime, any team, and this is not unique to Philly. We've talked about this a lot with the Lakers in the past when we talked about how much cap space could they have. Anytime you're carrying a guy, one single player whose salary is a third or more of the cap, it's going to be hard to fit in two more max salaries under your books. You're really only getting the two max salaries if you clear the decks and you're sitting there with a whole bunch of guys on rookie scale deals. Then maybe you can get to those double max because you're approaching 100 million, if not over 100 million in salary. So that's just some perspective, I hope, because I keep seeing and hearing and getting asked about, well, they're going to have double max, cap space. I don't think so. I just ran through the numbers and they are what they are. There's no changing those numbers around. It kind of is what it is. So that's just, I got to think at some point, Daryl Morey's going to have to kind of give on something. And it seems like giving some of the cap space away might be a smart move here. And then you just kind of move forward with whoever you get in the trade, Maxey, Embiid. And then you kind of, all right, do we keep Paul Reed? Do we keep a guy like DeAnthony Melton? And just kind of move forward from there.
Particularly as we look at the situation with Joel Embiid, right? Because that's the other thing that's out there is that there are teams already, of course there are, that are monitoring the situation because they feel like the next domino might be a Joel Embiid trade request. And if that comes, oh my gosh, Keith, we're gonna have to come up with some new alliterative term for
I don't
Joel
even know
Embiid.
what it would be.
I don't know what we would go with. We'd have to figure that. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But
the Joel jams or something, and we'd
I like that.
Like 80s and 90s jam music. That'd be fun.
Joel jams instead of jock jams.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. Yeah, we get some breakdance music going on. We do a little electric boogaloo.
Yep. I like it. So that's the other thing too. And I've always been a proponent of, if you've got cap space for next summer, that doesn't mean you need to wait until next summer or whenever it is.
Yep.
If you have an opportunity, you can do your essentially your quote unquote free agent shopping early and eat into that cap space and just consider it, hey, in free agency, instead of going and pursuing player X on the free agent market, I'm getting Tyler Hero today, and we're considering him the free agent that we picked up for the summer. That is, to me, that would be a prudent approach for the 76ers, because then you can sell Joel Embiid too. Look, hey, we didn't wait till next summer. We didn't wait. You're turning 30. We didn't wait and waste a year of your prime. We got you a guy right now that can help you out. Let's go win.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That pre-agency process, we've seen it in the past where teams jump on. I mean, the Lakers kind of did it this last year at the trade deadline, right? They went out and got a whole bunch of guys, re-signed most of those guys. And, as we've talked about in the past, the right guys, in my opinion, they kept around, and they're just kind of, rolling into next year with a lot of the guys they acquired last year because they were good fits. They became a good team, and off they went. So that is absolutely a way you could go with this. So we'll see. Daryl Morey's a smart guy. He's been doing this a long time. I think, he's maybe trying to play a hand that's not great, and he's bluffing a little bit here. And I think the Clippers have called it, and I think a couple, other teams. And I know right now Sixers fans are frustrated because they're like, they wouldn't give up Terrence Mann in the trade. Well, I'm sure it's not just Terrence Mann. It's Terrence Mann plus other things. And I'm guessing the Clippers are thinking, hey, wait a minute. We're going to have Harden, Kawhi, and PG, 3 guys, great players, but really sketchy track records of being available and health-wise. We cannot gut our roster by sending you 4 roster players, including Terrence Mann, who's an important player for them, just to get Harden in here, because you're at a point where, maybe at that point does Christian Wood or Kelly Oubre look and say, all right, there's minutes there. Like, I'm going to sign on for the minimum, and you just kind of run with it. But for right now, they're kind of sitting there saying, hey, we're not in a spot where we can do a 3 or 4 for 1 trade, sending out a bunch of quality depth pieces and be left with not much, we're running in behind this. So that's the tricky part.
All right, let's emerge from the hurricane here, and let's move on. Let's talk about something that actually did happen in the NBA. It's an actual move that took place. Usman Garuba, waived by the Thunder. We knew this was coming. Was coming. Ironic that we emerged from a hurricane only to enter into thunder, but nonetheless, we knew this was
very
coming.
little thunder in an actual hurricane, by the way.
That's true.
There's not much thunder that goes on. So just
okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have any other?
Sorry, I sidetracked you.
No, now I got to think, like, what other weather-related teams could we go to? I guess the Seattle Storm. We can make a jump over there or something like that.
Yeah.
But regardless,
Tampa Bay Lightning.
Oh, that's another good one.
Yeah,
that's another good one. The Lightning. Yep. I mean, even the
Seattle
Suns.
rain.
You could say the Heat, the weather. Anyway, we're going down. We're being led astray here.
We're Augusting it as well.
That's right. That's right. Augusting. We knew the Thunder were going to have to waive. So they have too many players on their roster, and so now Usman Garuba is now a casualty of that. He will be waived. I think he clears waivers, $2.5 million for the under contract team option for $4.4 million for next season. What do we see happening there?
Yeah, I think he probably will. This is, as many Thunder fans have pointed out, and correctly so, both Garuba and Ty Washington, who was waived at the end of last week and cleared waivers yesterday, as they put out, anybody could have had those guys. The Thunder got paid to take those guys in. If we remember kind of chaining the transactions together, they were traded to the Hawks in a, effectively a salary dump deal by the Rockets, as they were looking to clear out, their full cap space to bring in all the guys that they signed this summer. And then the Hawks turned around and salary dumped these guys plus Rudy Gay onto the Thunder. All 3 of them now, Rudy Gay, Usman Garuba, Ty Washington, have all been waived, there. So they're going to be in a spot where, we're just going to have to watch it play out at this point with Garuba. I would be more aggressive than these teams seem to be on claiming players off waivers. If I had a roster spot to give, I would have been all over Ty Washington. He was a first-round pick for a reason. I'd be all over Garuba as well. Those are low-cost players. You get them for the remainder of the rookie scale deal too, and just kind of see where it goes. The problem is, nobody is sitting on cap space really right now. There's a minimal amount left for a couple teams, but not enough to claim. So now you're talking using a trade exception to do it. And that's, teams are kind of looking at it and saying, I don't want him that bad. Just let him go. And then if I want to get him, I'll sign him to a minimum deal from there and kind of run with it. So I think that's what happened with Washington. I think the same thing will happen with Garuba.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. They also signed Olivier Sarr, but that's on a 2-way contract, so not eating up a roster spot of theirs. This is something to keep an eye on around the league as, we start to figure out there's teams who need to sign players to roster spots, and there are a few teams who need to cut players. OKC need to cut.
So the Thunder still +3 in roster spots. Probably the top 4 guys for those 3 spots, in my opinion, are Davis Bertans, Trey Mann, Victor Oladipo, and probably Jeremiah Robinson Earl. I think everybody else should feel pretty confident about where they're at. Maybe Jack White gets waived. That won't be a little odd because they did just sign him this offseason, and they gave him 600,000 guaranteed. So that's more than he can't then play for their G League team if they waive him, because that's too large of a guarantee to get him through to the G League. So I'm thinking, we could see, one of those, or not one, but three of those four guys. So again, Davis Bertans, Trey Mann, Victor Oladipo, and I forget who the last one I even just said was. Who was it? Jeremiah Robinson Earl. I think Isaiah Joe, they need his shooting. He was really good for them.
Such a good shooter.
Aaron Wiggins should stick. I'm a fan of Aaron Wiggins. I think he can really play. And then the rest of the guys, there's not really even a conversation to be had because they're all young rotation players. To be fair to the Thunder, too, because we've talked about this a lot, where when you have 1 million draft picks, they did not draft either Garuba or Washington. So this is really a situation where this is no different than any team eating a salary and then cutting a guy. The Spurs are going to do this and all that stuff. This was not caused by too many draft picks, but that is coming down the line. And now what you are seeing is too many draft picks. That's probably going to cost them either Trey Mann, Jeremiah Robinson, or a guy like that who were draft picks that the team invested in. But guys like Garuba, Washington, Bertans, if he gets waived, Oladipo, if he gets waived. And it should also be fair, too. They could trade these guys, too. They could work a trade where they get in and send these guys off and don't have to cut anybody. There's just not a lot of landing spots for things like that right now in the league because everybody's over the cap, and that's new cap rules and the new salary floor rules taking effect. Teams got up and hit that salary floor right away.
Yep. This is one of the consequences of the new CBA and the new rules, which I'm not saying they're a bad rule or anything like that. Just it's one of the things that you notice now that there's not really cap space floating around for teams to play with for an August trade. Although I still think we see something go down, potentially see something go down with that guy in Miami as the saga continues.
Like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives.
Yes, it's time for today's episode of the Dames of Our Lives.
I love it. That's
drama.
my dream coming to life there through our video partners there. I love it so much.
Damian Lillard dropping some hints on social media that, yes, he would like to join the Miami Heat, doing things like unfollowing the Blades. It's funny the way we pay attention to this stuff, like who a player's following.
So crazy.
Oh, they unfollowed this account. Oh,
how
my
do people
gosh.
even know?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird because a lot of these guys, they follow thousands of people. So, do you comb through them? I don't know. It's fun. Do you remember back in your early Twitter days when you kind of knew all of your followers because you just I remember when I had so few, it was oh yeah, I kind of know who all of my followers are. That's just kind of funny how that's changed. But yeah, I mean, people are all over this stuff. And then what was it? He liked a post where somebody was you need to bring this music to Miami or something like that about his latest record that he dropped or track, or I don't know if it was a song or a full album, whatever it was. But yeah, I mean, this is non-news because I think we all kind of know he wants to play for the Heat, but we'll see.
This is mostly we wanted to be able to play the drop.
Yes, absolutely. We'll own it. Hey, and if you guys start telling your friends hey, tune in because these guys play the absolute most ridiculous drops, we're 100% okay with that. You're meant to be ridiculous and fun and silly, and that's the idea. So tell a friend. But don't just tell them, hey, check out this show. And in the middle of it, you're going to get to see a Dames of Our Lives drop.
Absolutely. It's all kinds of fun here on the NBA Front Office Show. Last thing we've got for today, Team USA ready for the World Cup. So we saw Team USA take on our old friend Dennis Schroeder and Germany, as well as a number of NBA players. I mean, Daniel Tice, the Wagner brothers, Franz and Mo, right? We had a bunch of guys that were on Team Germany, looked really good. In fact, they were up 8 at halftime against Team USA, but the U.S. wound up pulling off the win. Anthony Edwards, he looked fantastic.
Yeah,
and now this USA group is 5-0 in exhibition tune-up games, if you will, heading into the World Cup, which starts up on Saturday. So
Yeah,
here we
Saturday
go,
morning,
off and
8
running.
8:40 Eastern
Bright
on the East
and
Coast.
early.
Yes,
Early.
basketball with breakfast for sure.
Yikes.
You can catch that game is on ESPN2. All of the US games will be on regular like cable, I guess. There, so whether it be ESPN or ESPN2, all the rest of the games, I believe, on ESPN Plus. You can stream them if you want, but yeah, that's their first game Saturday morning versus New Zealand. New Zealand, one of the few teams in there without without an NBA player. There are only, well, it's not only, but there's several countries that don't have an NBA player on their roster right now. One of which is New Zealand. Also in the United States group is Jordan as well. They don't have an NBA player, and then Greece is the third team in the group with the US, and they should add a couple, but Giannis is sitting out, so now it's just Thanasis as the lone NBA player on Greece. But we've seen Greek teams in the past with no NBA players give the United States a lot of trouble in international play before. But Germany was tough, man. Germany is big too. Daniel Tice, who plays solely at the 5 in the NBA, was their starting power forward. Franz Wagner at the 3, which is pretty much his NBA position. But they really made it hard on him. Dennis Schroeder did some stuff. Really, was kind of getting wherever he wanted early on. And I thought the US, they didn't try to go bigger. They just went small. They went, way smaller. And then they just beat them with quickness and speed. What was it, an 18-0 run, I think, in the fourth quarter, as they kind of took control there. So, yeah, a lot of U.S. guys are kind of having their moment right now. Anthony Edwards and Steve Kerr said, like, he's the man. Like, he's the guy for this group, which is pretty cool for him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very cool for Anthony Edwards. Something I'm keeping an eye on with Team USA, it's, I thought Walker Kessler was great last game. I thought that there was a noticeable difference between when Walker Kessler was on the floor and when Paolo Banchero was on the floor. And I like Paolo Banchero a lot, but I was a little confused personally as to why they went back to Paolo against a big Germany team. I'm interested to see what Kerr does. It feels like that's more Kerr's bread and butter, is playing smaller, putting Paolo Banchero in almost kind of a quasi Draymond role. I don't know that that's really in his wheelhouse right now to be that 5. It's a little bit clunky. So something I'm kind of keeping an eye on. I think long term, it makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
I don't know if they're ready, if they have to win a game right now, if that's the way to go. Or I thought Kessler was good enough 2 games ago to where they would start going to him more often. And unfortunately, we didn't see him at all against Germany. But curious to see what happens once we get into the World Cup, if they go with a more traditional big and Walker Kessler out there, or if we stick with Paolo Banchero.
Yeah, and they're I don't think they're going to be challenged in the group stage.
No,
at least not very much. They should handle those 3 teams, New Zealand, Jordan, and Greece, with relative ease. But yeah, as the games get more challenging, as they get deeper, we'll see. And I think what's very, very interesting in this is they're playing a lot of drop coverage, which Walker Kessler and Jaren Jackson Jr. fit great in. Jaren Jackson Jr., I mean, he fits in any defensive system you want, but he's been good in the drop coverage. But Banchero's not as good because he's just not a great rim protector. I think offensively, he gives them he can rip and run off the boards. You can run offense through him because he's a very good passer. He can do a lot of things out around the perimeter. That Kessler's just, he's more of a handoff screen guy and other things. So it's hard. So it might be one of those, what do we need right now? Do we need offense? Do we need defense? And maybe change it up. And, Bobby Portis is kind of doing what he does in the NBA too, right? Where he's just like, I'm kind of the third big and I do my thing when I'm out there and I just kind of go with it. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, that is clearly without a doubt the weakest part of this team's makeup is that interior group there. Cause I think a lot of people were worried about the shooting, but I think the shooting's been pretty good. Now, maybe that's just right now. Maybe it does get a little more shaky, but I think, guys like Austin Reeves, Cam Johnson, they've done a good job propping it up there. And I'll say this too. I give Brandon Ingram a ton of credit because I think the sense coming in was Brandon Ingram was going to kind of be the guy. And that was early on. They were running a ton of stuff for him and through him offensively and kind of put him in that role. And it's kind of really now that's become Anthony Edwards kind of
Yeah.
thing. And I think, Brandon Ingram kind of seeding that a little bit and saying, hey, go ahead, man. Like, let's go. That's big for him to kind of sacrifice and give up that role to some extent to Edwards. So, but this is a fun team. I kind of, don't get me wrong. I love when we bring all the stars and they just destroy everybody or, destroy most everybody. But it's kind of fun that, I think we're going to get some really competitive games and this group's going to be tested. I still think they'll win, and that's, partially my bias as an American coming through. But I think they've got a good chance. And I think also what's helped is the number of guys who've dropped out of the tournament from other countries as well.
Well, and I think what's interesting in watching the way the team plays, it's the starting group, which is so talented, but it's also very ISO heavy. It's a lot of guys where when push comes to shove, their default is I'm going to put the ball in the basket, right? You look at Jalen Brunson, you look at Anthony Edwards, Brandon Ingram, Mikal Bridges, maybe more of a kind of quasi spot up guy. It's evolving into a bigger, 1A role with Brooklyn. And then you've got a lot of guys where that is kind of their default setting. It's I'm going to go ISO and I'm going to go score the basketball. And that creates some stagnation that hasn't been quite as fun to watch. But defensively, their upside is tremendous with Jaren Jackson Jr. Anthony Edwards has been just a destroyer of worlds in passing lanes. He's been doing great things out there. And then you flip that to the bench unit when it's Austin Reeves, when it's Halliburton and the ball's pinging all over the place, and you've got some fluidity to the offense again. But of course, the defensive upside isn't as high. But I'd have to imagine from the opponent's perspective to play against Team USA, it's almost like you're playing two completely different teams that play completely different styles between the first and the second unit. And obviously there's some mixing and matching between those units, but it's fascinating. And it's still, so far, Steve Kerr has resisted doing something like maybe putting Halliburton in the starting lineup and moving Jalen Brunson to be kind of the go-to scorer for the bench unit or something like that. And he's kept it as these kind of separate platoons to a degree. And I'm curious to see if that can be successful all the way through, because it is such a complete difference in play style.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's kind of funny. There was, our buddy Josh Eberly kind of put a thing out this morning over on Twitter about how, Halliburton over Brunson. And I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said he likes Halliburton, but he really likes Brunson too, but he'd take Halliburton. And like some people went, because it's Twitter, went absolutely berserk because, if you say I like chocolate, that means you hate vanilla, right? So it's like,
right.
That's just the way those things work over there. But it was very interesting to see some of the reactions. And then, of course, mixed in there that unfortunately all too often get lost. There were some thoughtful, points made by people where it's like, it kind of, which I think is the point you were making, kind of depends on what you need, right? If you need somebody who's going to kind of, hey, I got it, it's me, like, let's go. That's Jalen Brunson. If you need a little bit more, hey, let's spread the ball around. Let's really keep it moving. Maybe a little bit more defense. Like Halliburton's a little bit better of a defender than Brunson, just the size thing there. Then that's probably Halliburton. So, but at the end of the day, if I'm Steve Kerr, I'm looking at it as like, hey, this is great. I've got kind of, everything I need. And what always is interesting in these competitions is who ends up falling out entirely. So far, it's been one of the bigs, right? Like you said, it was Walker Kessler the other day. It's definitely going to be one of the wings, kind of falls out there. And then when it gets down to winning time, like who steps up and plays 30 minutes? Who is it that's going to play this? The last thing I'll say on these international games, I love the pace of the game itself. Like these games zip right by. Like now it can be a little tricky because you end up in a spot where it's like, we only have limited timeouts to use each game. And you end up in a spot where it's like, man, like we don't want to give a foul and all that stuff. Cause it feels like sometimes guys go to sub in and then they're sitting over there for like 3 minutes because there's just not a whistle in that. And the FIBA refs, they're not good. Don't get me wrong. They make NBA refs look amazing. But on the flip side, they also don't give on the foul baiting stuff at all. Like they're like, nope. Like you're looking for stuff, you're flopping around, we're not giving it to you. So it's kind of interesting with that. But I'm excited, man. I'm excited for this weekend and to get into it and watch these teams play. I don't know that I'm getting up at 4:00 in the morning very, very often to get into games, but definitely the kind of second window of games I'll definitely be watching.
I'll say this too. Watching these games, it's been so jarring, and it's made me so thankful that the NBA's gotten rid of the take foul.
Yes.
Because when that happens, when you see teams doing it, it's so frustrating. And I'm like, thank goodness we don't have to deal with this in the NBA anymore, because that was essentially, it still happens from time to time, but it's punitive. It doesn't make sense strategically to do it anymore. So it's refreshing to see that and think, man, okay, the NBA got it. A lot of times, like, I like the FIBA rule that you can play the ball when it's on the rim and all that.
Oh, 100%. Got to change that in the NBA.
Right,
that needs to be,
There's stuff where I'm watching the FIBA game and I'm going, man, I wish we had that in the NBA, or I wish they did this or that. But when I see that take place in these games, I'm just going, man, all right, they need to catch up to the NBA here, because this is ridiculous.
In my annual Keith is, or daily, I guess, not annual, daily, Keith is old segment here, I do kind of miss, remember the old trapezoid lane?
Yes.
That FIBA used to have? Like, I
Uh-huh.
do kind of miss that at times. It was just, I don't know, it kind of was funny, and it made you know you were watching something different. So,
Right.
But shout out to Team USA versus the World too. That was a great video game back in the day. It was made by EA Sports, if I remember correctly, and you could actually play the Dream Team there. We had to make a rule because we had too many fights. No one was allowed to be Team USA when we'd sit down and play that in our friend group, because you were just gonna kill everybody.
You're gonna win. It's a cheat code.
Yeah, it was it. You couldn't. I mean, that between that and Bo Jackson and Tecmo Bowl, man.
Oh, yeah.
People like that. There was another rule we had: no more Bo Jackson in Tecmo Bowl, because everybody was just kind of going. I remember two of my friends, like they gave each other black eyes, like throwing actual like real punches, going at it over a Tecmo Bowl game
Over Bo Jackson.
Yep, that's it, man. That was it.
You used to be able to like run all the way to the goal line, and then just turn around, run all the way back, and then you could do circles. Nobody could catch you.
There's YouTube videos of people running out entire quarters, running one play from their own like 1 yard line with Bo Jackson, and just running entire plays. What a great game Tecmo Bowl was. Like,
and what a great quirk in that game that Bo Jackson is the cheat code.
Man, you couldn't have told me there was any single athlete better in the world. I mean, fair enough, the guy played at a high level in the NFL and the and Major League Baseball, so maybe there wasn't a better athlete in the world at the time. But yeah, he was unstoppable. Tecmo Bowl, baby.
That's right. All right, I think that's a good place to call it a day. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Make sure that you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office Show on YouTube. Don't forget to turn on those notifications and like this video. And, of course, over on the podcast side, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure that you do give us that 5-star rating and review. Great way to help out the show. All right, till next time. See ya and stay safe.